Why, hello folks! Today we're going to be taking a look at the Briefcase guns. Yeah, the two new Tenet weapons. Clearly inspired by the classic Antonio Banderas movie Desperado. Because hey man, briefcase guns are like the coolest thing ever. And that movie did happen to have one big briefcase that turned into a rocket launcher, and two smaller briefcases that turned into, machine pistols. So I think it's kind of a neat little homage. So we have two of them. We have this bad boy right here, the Tenet Envoy. Rocket launcher, big old blast. And it's also, it's got like a lock-on mechanism with the laser pointer, so I can just fire here, but then I can like just point where I want it to hit. See? Kind of cool. That can also make it a bit tricky to aim in the air with this, because you're like jumping and you aim and you shoot, but then it's like, you see that? It was like hovering around a bit. That can happen where like, sometimes if you like aim on at a certain space or whatever, the thing can just sort of zoom around in the air a bit. You don't really know what to do. And you can also, if you have a good enough fire rate, you can just fire off multiple things. See here? I can just do... And when I want them to land... Boom! And have all of them hit in one area, which is kind of rad. But we're going to be looking at both the briefcase guns at the same time here. The second one are these bad boys right here, the Tenet Diplos, which is, just dual machine pistols. Pretty self-explanatory. They also have a lock-on mechanism, which is that if you like hover the reticule over enemies, like this, you tag them, see? And if you tag enemies like that, then you can just fire into the air or whatever, and it's gonna hit them. It's a cute little mechanic, it's the Fifth Element? Yeah. That sort of lock-on gun. It's neat, but it has some problems, that mode. The problems is that, like, you can't go full auto. See, because now I'm holding down the shoot button now, and it stops. It just fires a burst, so you can't just keep on firing. Then you have to lock on again, and you fire the burst. Then you locked on again, and then you fire the burst. So if you only lock on to like a single enemy, and then hold down the shoot button, that's it. And then you have to wait until you can shoot again. So, unfortunately, it's a cool gimmick, but the way they designed it makes it fairly useless, because you want to be able to unload on enemies, and you can't. So what you do is you start firing, and then you start aiming while you're holding down the fire button, like this. And then you can start aiming, and it'll just fire like normal. So it's a bit clunky that you have to do that to force it to not use this neat little fire mode, because this neat little fire mode is actually kind of garbage. It's much better to just, just rain down a stream of bullets. Now, another thing you might have noticed about both of these things is that they have an abysmally slow reload time. Now, this is for two reasons, I'm gonna say. Number one, we're probably gonna see this a lot more going forward, that guns are gonna have longer reload time. And the reason for that is because of the new Arcanes. Now, I'm still farming these, so I don't have a maxed one yet. I'm still trying to get a maxed primary merciless. Haven't gotten that far yet. I'm doing it in my own time. But if you see the max ranked Arcane Merciless, this is something that when they design guns moving forward from now on, they're gonna assume that people have this. They're gonna design new guns around people having this. Which means that reload speed, they're gonna take into account that you can actually increase your reload speed this way. So I have a suspicion that from now on we're gonna see longer reloads times on pretty much all guns moving forward. At least all guns that would use the primary merciless. But these two guns have another gimmick, and that is while they are holstered, they reload. So if I were to do this, and I empty this, there, and then I switch to these bad boys. See there? Ah, it's reloading itself! So cool, it's doing pretty fast too. Now it's back up to full. Now it's fully reloaded again. So if I were to like just fire off all of these shots, and then I switch to my pistols that have the same mechanic, and then we fire off all of those, and then by the time this is done and we switch back, we can start shooting this one again. And while this is reloading, we can switch back, and then we can start shooting these again, which is super rad. And like, I have to sort of assume that they're kind of designed around this. I think that these two guns, the rocket launcher and the pistols, are kind of designed to be used together, and it makes for a really sort of cool gameplay loop where you switch between them in combat. So you run around with this thing, and you just, you know, you blast off, and you fire at enemies, and you shoot them and the whatnots, and then when you run out of ammo, you just swap your pistols, start cleaning house with your pistols, and then when these run low, you swap back to your rocket launcher, and then you start firing rockets. I kind of dig it. I kind of dig it from sort of like a gameplay perspective. I'm not sure it's the most super efficient way of like playing the game, but it feels really fun. It feels really fun to use these two weapons in conjunction with each other. It's a feel-good weapon. it really is a feel-good weapon. So I think they're meant to be used as a pair, because they both have that sort of mechanic of reloading while they're holstered, and they kind of complement each other with the heavy-duty rocket launcher and the rapid-fire machine guns, sort of like doing different things. They're kind of also neatly paired with the Tenet melee weapons. The Tenet melee weapons also have a similar mechanic where not reload, but they keep their combo counter. They keep their combo counter while they're holstered. So again, you're sort of rewarded for switching between weapons and swapping and using different things. So you could use something like the secondary dexterity as well, if you want to like sort of combine melee attacks with these guns, because the max ranked dexterity also has a bonus to holster speed, which is kind of nice for these weapons, since you want to switch back and forth between them sort of all the time. And I kind of like that they've designed them this way, because otherwise that's been the big problem. That like, why would you swap between weapons? What purpose is there? You pick your primary weapon, and then you use your primary weapon, and you don't really have a good reason to ever swap to your secondary, unless you're like running with the Kuvanu core and you want to spread status effects, but then you're probably going to use a melee weapon instead. Very rarely do you switch between primaries and secondaries as part of your normal gameplay loop, but you do with these two. So the next question is obviously, are they any good? Is it worth it to run with these weapons? Well, this is the Envoy, and these are level 185 corrupted heavy gunners. So if I would like fire off some shots here, we'll see that this thing packs a punch. They go down. So yeah, it's a pretty good rocket launcher. And the damage is absolutely there. It shoots in a huge blast radius. It's massive. And what about the pistols? Do they pack a punch? Well, yes they do. They actually kill things quite fast if you build them right. Now obviously this is, again, improved even further if you're running the new Arcanes. I don't even have the max rank ones. But I'm currently sort of like just building up my my primary merciless bonus here. So now I'm at 9. And even with just like a rank 2 primary merciless, we're already at the point where these guys are actually melting quite fast to this barrage. So yeah, they're pretty good little weapons. They're quite nasty, these little pistols. I like them a lot. Let's check out my builds, shall we? For the Envoy, what's important to note is when you farm for an Envoy and hunt for the Corpus Lich that can spawn an Envoy, what you really want is an Envoy, or you want a Corpus Lich with toxin damage. And the reason why you want toxin damage is because the radial attack on this Envoy, the big blast, it has innate cold damage. So if you just get toxin damage, instead this weapon will have innate viral damage on the blast. It will just do viral damage by itself, which is very nice. Now obviously with my build right here, which is not at all sort of mandatory, I chucked in primed cryo rounds just because I wanted to bump up the damage numbers even further. So it just big more damage. What you can do also, once they sort of get it fixed so it works the way it's supposed to, you can chuck in like galvanized aptitude to increase status chance and increase damage that way instead. There are a couple of other options as well with this. I put in a primed shred here, and the reason why is because moving forward, this is very important for all weapon builds. Moving forward, if you have a max rank primary merciless, then the flex spot in your build is actually going to be Serration. Serration is the mod you are going to replace. And the reason for this is because of how damage scaling in this game works and how you're supposed to mix and match, because you get diminishing returns if you just bump the same damage type over and over again. This is just an increase to the base damage. Boom. I increased my damage by 165%. So I more than doubled my damage. If I then add a primary merciless, okay, so we got this plus 300% and the whatnot. It's not gonna like it just adds to this. So it's gonna be like plus 400% damage. And then we can add a heavy caliber. And at that point, another plus 165% damage on top of the 450 or whatever. It's actually gonna... Every new increase to base damage is gonna matter less and less for your overall damage output. What you want instead is to add a bunch of different damage types, because they sort of multiply with each other instead. Which is why you want one thing that increases your base damage, and then you want some more stuff that increases your elemental damage, and then you want some more stuff that increases your multi-shot, and then you want some more stuff that increases, in this case, your blast radius, because hitting more enemies with each shot equals more DPS. Then you want another thing that gives you more crit chance, then you want another thing that gives you more crit damage, etc, etc. So now that we have primary merciless and we're using this as the thing that bumps our base damage, we no longer need Serration to do this. So if you have a max rank primary merciless, I recommend actually that you remove Serration and put in something else instead. And that's where we come to another type of damage, which is fire rate. If you simply shoot more bullets per second, that is also a DPS increase that will multiply with your other sources of damage and just do more big damage. So don't sleep on that, especially if you are gonna be... This thing has an abysmally slow reload speed as it is. So more fire rate also means you have to spend more time reloading. But in this case, with these two weapons, you're switching between them back and forth anyway, so reload is gonna be fine. You don't have to worry about that. So that's kind of why I'm just sort of showing off Prime Tread here as a way of just increasing fire rate. So when you remove serration, maybe you can add, I don't know, maybe you can add the galvanized aptitude instead for just a more status chance. That could be a thing. Maybe you just want to add some more elemental damage so that you can stack different elemental types so that you can get like heat plus viral instead of just viral, if that's, you know, what you want to go for. So the food for thought when it comes to modding weapons from now on. People have run the numbers, people have looked at it and see what you're supposed to do, and yes, the math checks out. If you have a primary merciless at max rank, you are in fact supposed to remove serration. This first time that this has been true since serration was introduced to the game, basically. Going forward, the top meta for weapon building is not gonna include serration. Good to know. For the Diplos, again, I'm using Merciless on this one, but you can use Dexterity if you want. If you want to just increase the holster speed so you can swap between weapons faster, and if you want to use a melee weapon as well, as a way of just bumping up your damage. But I kind of like Merciless because that also helps because it increases reload speed and ammo maximum if you have that at max rank. You can also run Deadhead on this one. Because if you can just land headshots and stuff, you can stack damage that way as well, and those stacks last a bit longer. Otherwise, you know, it's a very sort of classic build here. Just your standard secondary build for heat, viral, stacking a bunch of different status effects and stuff. Same here. Once the aptitude starts working the way it's supposed to, in this case galvanized shot, since this thing stacks a bunch of different stuff, impact, puncture, slash, it's got all three, and then add heat plus viral plus onto that. So once this sort of damage boost works the way it's supposed to, and you get the sort of condition overload effect on your weapon, which currently seems to be a bit bugged and currently doesn't seem to be working right. But once that does work right, then that's going to be like a huge damage buff as well. And then you can just sort of, you know, run whatever innate element you want, so you can still get that sweet and sexy heat plus viral combo. And that's the thing in a nutshell. That's how you build these weapons, and they're super cool. Design-wise, they really do it for me. I love the aesthetics of the briefcases that turn into guns, and they're really, really fun to use together in conjunction with each other. So if you haven't farmed for these bad boys yet, I absolutely recommend you do. They're strong, they're really strong, but most of all, they're fun. They're super fun to use, and that should be a metric by itself, like how we judge different weapons. The fun factor is not something to be ignored. So go and hunt for the Tenet Envoy and the Tenet Diplos, because damn, they're rad.